Welcome amigos to another exciting After Effects and Adobe Illustrator tutorial. I'll show you how to create your very own custom 8-bit pixel art in Illustrator and then animate in Adobe After Effects. Now this style has been recently popular in music videos and NFTs, so you'll definitely want to check out this tutorial. And remember that life is truly a gift. Make it count. We'll be using Adobe Illustrator to create our pixel art and hit new file. Let's make the width and the height both 1080 by 1080. Let's go to more settings. And for the transparency grid, I prefer to set it to off, and let's create the document. Now head over to the line segment tool, click and hold, and let's go to the rectangular grid tool. And when we click and drag, we have our grid. Now, if you hold on to Shift, you can make a perfect square. Also, use the arrows on the keyboard to add or subtract rows and columns. If you hit the arrow down, you'll be subtracting rows, and if you hit the left arrow, you'll be subtracting columns. So let's subtract all of them, and hit the arrow up to add rows, and the right arrow to add columns. Now, what I'm going to do instead is hit delete, and I want to place it right at the corners of our document. So let's go ahead and place it right at the corner like that. Let's add more rows and columns. One more, and that looks perfect. Now, very important, the stroke, we need to set it to none, and the fill, we need to set it to none. And let's go to object, and let's go to expand. Now, to create our pixel art, we'll be using the Live Paint Bucket tool, which is this icon here, and it's also the letter K. Commit this keyboard shortcut to memory because we'll be always using this. And all we need to do now is add a color. We can go to our swatches. Let's go to the swatches, and we can add a color. And we can click, and wherever we click, it'll fill that box with that color. Now, if you want to erase, all we need to do is set it to none, and we've erased it. Now, this isn't really on a white background. This is on a transparent background. So don't get mistaken. White will actually be a color. Now, what I'm going to do is add some swatches, some color palettes. So let's go to pop art, and I'll also add skin tones. This is just a better way to select your colors. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to draw a J Balvin CryptoPunk style NFT, and let's get started. So what I'll do is let's start right here. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down here, and then let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. Now for here, let's do the ear, and let's just go down. Perfect. And let's go ahead and select this blue, and let's give him some shades. We'll make it 3 by 3. Perfect. Let's go back to the black. Little nose. And some eyebrows. Let's go to the skin tones. And what I'll do for the skin tones, this color right here, I'm going to add for the skin tones. Now, let's go one shade lighter to create a highlight. We can create this little highlight, and this is back to the skin tone. One shade darker to create the shadow. Now, you can also hit Control-Shift-A to hide the grid, and that should definitely help you guys out. We can do this here. Okay, now let's go back. Let's add this yellow for the hair, this crazy hair. And let's go back to the yellow, double click. Let's make it a little darker. Perfect. Let's go back to the skin tones, and what I'll do, this brown right here, this will be his beard. He has a little beard. And let's go back. Let's create this for the mouth. And what we can do is, let's go hit I for the eyedropper tool. We can select this color for the sunglasses, and we can make it lighter. Now what we need to do is hit K for the live paint bucket tool, and we can create like a little pattern for the reflection. Finish it off right there. Perfect. And if you want to save it, file export, save for web legacy, and you can save it as a GIF. You can also save it as a JPEG, although it'll have a white background. PNG will also have a transparent background. Let me open up my Mega Man. And let's go to our layers. And what I did is, for Mega Man, I had the sprite, and I used that as a reference. And you can see that reference. All I'm doing is pretty much just tracing it. So let me set that up for you. Let me show you how to do that. Let me hide this one, create a new layer, and call it ref. And all you need to do is go to File, Place, find your image. For example, this one, Mega Man Run Cycle 01. And what I'm going to do is put it right on the edge. Perfect. And if you want, let's go to the transparency, and we can bring it down a little, maybe 90%. It's up to you. You can bring it down to maybe 50, 60, 70. If it's too much, we'll keep it at 85. And then what I do is go back to my layers, and then I'll lock it, and I'll create a new layer, and let's go to the grid tool. And now let's create our grid. And definitely we need to add more rows and columns. Let's see, one more maybe, perhaps. And just make sure that the stroke and the fill is set to none. We'll expand this. And now what we can do is pretty much, whoops, let's undo. What we can do is hit K for the live paint bucket tool. And now we can paint. We can just paint over it. And we need to select the black to do it. You can hit Control-Shift-A to hide it, Command-Shift-A to hide the grid. And you can see that the better you line this up, the better it'll be. It's not perfectly lined up. It's a little off, but nonetheless, it should definitely help out. Should serve as a great guide to creating this. And instead of showing you, having you sit through all this for me recreating this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also open up another project that I did, the Kobe Bryant. So I have this image of Kobe, and this is a pixel art. So you can see that I use this image, this photograph as my reference. And I'll show you this one. And for this example, this pixel art, maybe the squares was a little too big. I could have gone a little smaller so I can add a couple more details, but you can see that you can still see what's going on, the main action. To animate your pixel art, what you need to do is draw the different poses and cut between the different poses. What you can use as a reference is search for video game sprite sheet. You can see all the different examples. And this is the one that I use for Mega Man. Now, if there's a specific video game, for example, we can type in Street Fighter. That's a common one. And for example, we can click on this one. And let me show you Mega Man. And let's click on this one. Let's zoom in. And this one is a great one because it has a transparent background. This isn't 8-bit. This is a lot better. You can use this as a reference or you can use it as is. Now, when you're working with these sprite sheets, you'll see one big file. What you need to do is prep them in Photoshop or any other software. And this is a sprite sheet that I use for Mega Man. And let me show you the files. And you can see that I prepped each pose in its own file, so I can use each one as a layer, as a reference in Illustrator when I'm drawing my own pixel art. To animate your pixel art, you simply need to have the different poses and cut between those different poses in any editing software. Now, for this tutorial, I'll be cutting inside of After Effects because we'll be downloading some cool backgrounds from this website that I'll show you. And this website has different layers for the background so we can create parallax. And to create the parallax, the easiest way is to use After Effects. Now, for this Mega Man inspired pixel art, it's a run cycle. I gave myself a little lighter hair, which is going with any colors at the moment. So I have CM1, CM3. I skipped over the second one. CM4, 5, 6, 7, 9. We skipped over the 8th one. And we have CM10. So we'll be cutting between those different layers in After Effects. Now for the Kobe, I only have 4. I have this one, Kobe 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can create animation with as little as 4 or even 3 different poses. Now, save these as an Illustrator file, .ai. You can see it says .ai. Save those as an Illustrator file. Let's go to After Effects and let's import those files. Hit Control-I, Command-I to import. Let's import this one, Pixel Art Mega Man V2. And we'll select Composition. We'll select document size and hit OK. Now let's double click to jump inside this comp. And what I'll do is I'll select all the reference layers and let's delete it. We don't need it at all. When you're cutting between the different poses, definitely take that time to experiment. Anywhere between 3 to 6 frames will typically give you good results, but take your time, experiment, amigos. Now for this one, what I'll do is we'll cut every 3 frames. Let's select the first one, hold on to Shift and select the last one. Let's go to frame 3 and using the keyboard shortcut Alt or Option and the right bracket, it'll trim it, but let's trim here so it's exactly at frame 3. Now let's right click, let's go to Keyframe Assistant and let's go down to Sequence Layers and hit OK. Let's unhide all the layers and let's move the cursor right here. Hit N for November to set the out point. Let's check it out. And we have our run cycle. Now let's right click and let's go to Trim Comp to Work Area. And this one, this comp, let's call it CM Run Cycle. Now let's bring this comp into this comp icon and hit Control K, Command K to open the composition settings. And for the duration, let's increase it to 5 seconds. Now let's make sure we'll make it 29.97 for the frame rate. And let's go back to the run cycle, Control K, Command K. Just make sure that your frame rate stays consistent among all your different comps. Let's go back. Now what we'll do is we'll make a copy, Control D or Command D to make a copy, and let's move it. Hold on to Shift so it'll snap right to the end. Let's make another copy. Hold on to Shift so we can snap it right to the end. One more. Let's check it out. Perfect. Okay, and this comp, let's call it CM Run Cycle Loop. Now let's go to our browser and I'm going to provide this link in the description. This is a website where you can download video game assets and backgrounds, and it's pretty cool. Definitely take a look. The one that I use is this one, this Cyberpunk street environment. I'm also going to provide the link so you can download this one. And let's import those files into After Effects. Control I, Command I. And let's go into the folder. And I'll go into the PNG. And what I'll do is I'll go into the layers. And we have 3 different layers: the foreground, the back buildings, and the far buildings. Now let's create a new composition. And we'll call this pixel art animation. And again, make sure that you have the same frame rate, and we'll make it 5 seconds long. We'll make it 1080 by 1080, stay consistent. Let's hit OK. And let's go to the foreground, let's bring that in. Let's go to the back buildings, bring that in, and then finally the far buildings. And you can see the only downside is they're really small images, but we'll scale them up. Select the far buildings and the back buildings. Let's parent it to the foreground. Select the foreground, S for scale, and let's scale it up. And we'll make it 600%. Now select these 2 and let's unlink it. And what we'll do is select all the layers, turn on the 3D switch, and let's go to 2 views. And this view, make sure that it is a top view, and this one will be our active camera. Now for the back buildings, let's change the color to blue. This one, we'll change it to orange, and the foreground, let's make it yellow. Now what we'll do is let's go to the back buildings, hit P for position, and let's push it back in Z space. And we'll push it back 500 pixels. And the far buildings, P for position, and let's push it back 1000 pixels. So you can see here we have the foreground layer here. This is our top view again. You can see top view, our back buildings, and our far buildings. And if we go to custom view 1, let's zoom in and let me orbit so you can see this is what we have. Now let's go back. Let's go select this window, active camera. Let's go to 1 view. Now what we'll do is let me zoom out here. Let's go to back buildings, hit S for scale. Now what we need to do is scale this up so it matches the height of our foreground. So let's scale this up. Let's zoom out so you can see better. And this will be 800%. Again, what we need to do is the back buildings, we want to match the height of this foreground. And you can see the foreground, this is our foreground layer. Let's go to the far buildings, S for scale. And again, let's do the same thing. Let's match the height of our foreground layer. And this will be 1000. Perfect. Let's create a camera. And we'll make it 50 millimeter, hit OK. Let's bring it up. Make sure that it's still selected. Let's go to layer, down to camera, and we'll go to create orbit null and hit P for position and make sure that your CTI is at the beginning at 0. Let's add a keyframe and let's move the X value. Let's move it here and let's move our CTI all the way to the end. And let's adjust the X value. And you can see that we have parallax. As we move the camera, we have nice parallax going between our foreground, our midground, and background. Now for these back buildings, all the way in the back, it's actually the far buildings. What we need to do is let's tile that, go to effect, we'll go to stylize, motion tile, and for the output width, let's make it 150. And let's mirror the edges, and that should take care of it. So let's play it, let's check it out. This is looking pretty cool. And let's go to our project. Let's bring in the CM run cycle loop. Let's bring it in. We'll keep it a 2D layer. Don't turn on the 3D switch. Just keep it a 2D layer. And we can move them down a little bit. Let's check it out. And that is it. Now there's one thing that I need to point out. And if we zoom in, we're in full quality, but you can see some lines. And that seems to be an issue with importing Illustrator files. Because if we go back to Illustrator, and if I export in one of the different formats, you can see that Illustrator is doing a good job. We don't see any lines at all. This is how it should be. However, when you import that file in After Effects, you can see the lines. But there is a quick hack that I'm going to show you how to fix it. Select your layer, go to Effect, and we'll go to Matte, and go to Simple Choker. And for the choke matte, simply make it -1 should be good. If you need a little more, just go to a little more. But -1, a value of -1 should work out perfectly. All right, let me quickly show you the Kobe Bryant. What we'll do is Control-I, and let's import that file, Kobe pixel art. And let's jump into this composition. I'll hit Control-K, Command-K. Let's change the width to 1920 by 1080. And what I'll do is I'll delete the reference layers. And for this one, every 5 frames I'm going to cut. So let's go here and Alt right bracket. Let's just move this. And actually on the last one, let's hold on the last one. And then let's bring in the net. And the net, we can move it. Kobe D, let's move him here. Let's take out snapping. Perfect. And then this one, Kobe C, we can bring it here. Kobe B here, and then Kobe A, let's bring it here. So let's check it out. Maybe this is down here. And you can see that with just 4 different poses, we can create this pretty cool stop motion animation, pixel art animation. You can add a background. Take advantage of this website to download backgrounds for your pixel art animation. And remember, amigos, that life is truly a gift. Make it count.